Welcome back, everyone. Mike McConville here one more time for String Tech. We've got a couple of amazingly beautiful guitars. Now, I've done quite a bit of work for Chris already. This guitar he had commissioned. It was made in Vietnam. It looks like it's seen a few winners, and it's moved around considerably. Let me just get a straight edge and show you what the issue is here. So with my trusty 10-inch straight edge, you can see how much rocking we've got at that neck to body junction. The other thing is the saddle is so low on this guitar that we need to kind of set the neck back a little bit, but this is a Spanish heel. It's completely integrated. The sides feed into the back of the neck. There's a foot on the back, which I will show you in a bit. The only choice we have is a bit of a balancing act from taking more off here, straightening out this high spot, and actually buying back as much as we can with that neck angle, and then refretting with a large fret. So that's the procedure that we're going to need to go through to change that trajectory of the neck angle ever so slightly, so we get a little bit more room on the saddle and a little bit more force on this beautiful soundboard. Now the other guitar, we are facing the same issue, maybe even a little bit more extreme. So that's got to be taken down. We've got plenty of thickness in the fingerboard. My biggest concern, of course, is the inlay, which I don't know how thick it is, but to get this thing to behave, it's going to have to come down quite a bit, so we'll just have to see as we move along. Those frets are like razor blades along the edge of the neck too. And you can see this saddle as well is bottomed out. I should mention that in both cases these bridges are lifting. They need to be carefully removed, the foot radiused, and re-glued like we did on those last couple of Martins. Without any further ado, I'm going to start on that other guitar first. Now that the fingerboard correction and the complete fret job is done, this is what we have now for the lay of the neck. Now there's a little bit of relief in there. There is loads of room on that truss rod to adjust it. And I've got enough tension on the truss rod right now that if I back it off, it'll come into even more relief. This is without string tension. We didn't lose any of that inlay, even at the top end here. Here, I took a lot of material off to correct this neck. There's the face of the headstock. There is the sound hole inlay, and this is the back inlay. This is all real abalone, by the way. This is not plastic. Here's another look at the headstock. That is the access to the truss rod here. There is no truss rod cover. Look at that beautiful work on the cutaway and the figure on the sides. Well, next task is the bridge needs to be removed very carefully. And this is where the rubber hits the road. 250 watt bulb, 3.5 inch distance, 7 minutes. Alright, here's what we have. This is the original bridge. So first of all, you don't spray a finish over top of a bridge. So as you just saw in the previous clip, I heated up this bridge from the base wing to center and slipped my probe under there and then got all my little, as you saw on that Martin D41, I got all my little helper chips in there to hold it up. I heated it again a second time from about here to here. And then I use those small chips to hold that up. Of course, the top itself was protected by heat guard, that old ironing board material that I use. So it took 4 sessions to get this bridge off cleanly. I wanted to explain that before I show you the top where this bridge was attached. This original bridge was kind of put into place on a bed of epoxy, so it was not an easy thing to remove. So the next step, I have this chunk of ebony fingerboard material, and I face jointed the one side and then trace this. I'm telling you all the steps that I went through to do this. So I put 2-sided tape on here and tape that bridge into place. And then the first thing you do before you cut the shape is, with this bridge taped to the piece of ebony, I spot drill each of these holes about 1/8 of an inch deep. Then I cut the bridge slightly oversized. I did lay masking tape down so I could see the pencil line, and I cut the bridge slightly oversized. So there was a little bit more in the front, a little tiny bit more in the back, all the way around perimeter, and then a little bit longer on the wings. Once that was done, I through drilled those holes, cut the larger perimeter, and sanded it down to get a good representative of the original bridge shape. And then I went to the disc sander and sanded a 24-foot spherical radius on the foot of the bridge. So let's go to the guitar and take a look. So I'm happy with this fit. I am going to pull this bridge off because I want you to see the actual soundboard surface before I glue the bridge on. I have these unions with the rubber-lined washer on both sides to kind of hold that bridge in place. Now, I have mentioned this in other videos. I am able to shift the bridge ever so slightly before I torque this down. Let me take this other one off so you can take a good look at the footprint on the soundboard. So this bridge actually has a spherical radius, 24-foot spherical radius. I did not take a single speck or sliver of wood. What complicates this a little bit further, because of the way the bridge was attached on that bed of epoxy, and then later the finish was blown over top of the bridge, well, you end up with a ridge all along that outside where the finish kind of pools up at the intersection of the bridge and the soundboard. So I very, very carefully spent quite a bit of time actually just getting this down to the point so that when I put the bed of glue on, it will be the same thickness as the finish. You can see that here the bridge actually extends onto the finish a little bit. It's a little bit wider than the original bridge, and it needed to be able to cover up that footprint. So I am going to mask this off one last time. A little tiny trace of epoxy here still, and here. I'm going to put the bridge back on, and I'll mask off the replacement bridge tight to the line and do my last little bit of sanding as I warm up the glue and get ready to glue this bridge on and let it set overnight. I have established the footprint of the bridge for the final time now. I'll do this last finesse of the perimeter of that footprint before I heat up the glue and glue the bridge into place and let it sit overnight. I have rolled that front edge a little bit to make it look a little bit more like that original bridge. I've softened this all the way across that front edge, and I will hand sand and just again sort of soften these edges here before I actually glue the bridge into place. Okay, so I'm going to take this bridge off for the final time before we glue it on and let it sit overnight. And I'll do the last little bit of fitting. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting the last little trace of that ridge line of the finish buildup at the edge of the bridge. So the wood glue that I'm using, the thickness of that bed of glue will be dead even with the thickness of the finish. And this gives us completely intimate contact between the foot of the bridge and the surface of the soundboard. This is 180 grit, by the way. Not much left to go here. We've pretty well arrived. So I've gotten rid of all of the epoxy and the ridge line of finish around the perimeter of the bridge. And we are essentially ready to glue. Well, that's it. She's glued into place. All the glue squeeze is cleaned up. We're going to let that set overnight. We'll just take a look at the front edge. I can see a little hint of glue squeeze there. I'm going to get that before I put it away. Happy with that. We will let that set overnight and come back tomorrow and calculate that bridge slot. Well, here's a tip for extracting that 1032 rod after the glue has set. Because we've got such a close tolerance, the hole to the diameter of the rod, the threads inevitably get covered with glue, and you're not going to pull this out. So I have tightened one nut against the other, and then with my speed wrench, I'm going to just turn this out. So it's really threaded into the glue. Obviously I'm going to get the reamer and clean that up. We are getting ready to slot the bridge, but I want to take a minute and explain how I've arrived at this measurement. The first thing you do is switch to metric. Why? Well, because metric is divisions of 10. And if you have divisions of 10, that allows me to use this formula, which works on a percentage of the scale length. So the total scale length is 64.9 centimeters or 649 millimeters. For the placement of the bass string, we take this theoretical distance, which is from the nut to this line right here is 64.9 centimeters or 649 millimeters. We multiply that by 0.097, and the number we come up with is 6.10 millimeters. That is the distance from that theoretical point to the proper compensation for the low E string. Come over to the treble side, We take that same formula, 64.9 times 0.047, and that gives us 3.05 millimeters. And this is the compensation for the first string, from the theoretical line to this compensated line. I have had a few people ask this question, a very good question. When I'm doing a compensated nut, which I will be doing in this case, this line represents the back of the saddle. If you're not doing a compensated nut, then this line would represent the center of the saddle. The other question that one of my subscribers recently asked was, well, can you use this for different scale lengths, from Martin to Gibson to Taylor, etc., etc.? Of course you can. Because it's based on a percentage, the difference between a Larrivée scale length and a Martin scale length and a Gibson is so minuscule that this works perfectly fine. Just remember that first step, convert to metric immediately, ditch the imperial. Now you can work on a percentage. This works very precisely, and you will hear it when we're all done. Time to make the cut. So because I am putting a compensated nut on this guitar, this line now will represent the back of the saddle. Now I've got my plate all lined up here. This is my stop point on both sides. This is exactly where we're making the cut. No guesswork here. Now I did want to mention that we have switched over to solid aluminum rails. We were using U-channel before, it worked fine, but we decided to go with solid rails just to stiffen up the plate even further. So these latest bridge slotting jigs will actually have solid aluminum rails. And we're ready to make the cut. Oh yeah, one other thing, I have mentioned this as well in other videos. This plate is a duplicate of the Bosch Colt router base. You will see engraved here front and rear. You have to be aware of that because the distance from the center to the front and the center to the back is not equidistance. Just wanted to point that out. Pay attention. Do your dry run. Take all the guesswork out. And we are ready now to make the cut. You can see why this is a hit with all the TechDeck guys, because it's the universality of the TechDeck as well as the universality of this bridge slotting jig that makes it so attractive. Here's a view from the other side, and you will see it as I pull it apart. All right, giddy up. Let's make the cut. Well, the way Darcy has this packed, it comes right out of the box, assembled, just like you see here. Open the box, lift it up, set it on the guitar, you're good to go. A final wipe with some smoked ebony stain. So before we get to work on the saddle, I did want to bring you in and show you the Spanish heel. So there's no traditional head block like you would see in a Martin, Larrivee, Gibson style steel string guitar, the neck is all integrated. The sides are slidingly received into the edge of that block that you see, that mahogany block. So there's no way you're doing a neck reset on this guitar. You'd basically destroy the thing even attempting to do it. But we didn't need to. The way we did it was much more stealth, and at a glance, when we're all done, nobody would ever know that anything was done. That's the idea. Cover your tracks.